besties, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have for you another video where I recap a romance book that I read. For those of you who are new here, I'm pretty well known on my channel for reading romance and roasting it and talking about it. And so I thought what would be more fitting than to do Bridgerton, since Bridgerton season 3 just came out. So I actually have read Colin and Penelope's book, which is called Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I think this is the 4th book in the series. Have I read the first 3 books? No, but I have seen the first 2 seasons of the show. I actually have not watched Penelope's episodes yet. I'm kind of saving them. I was waiting for all of them to come out, but I thought it would be fun to go over this because I have heard many times that Colin in the book is even worse than in the show, which is really saying something. Also, if you've never seen one of my videos where I use my bulletin board, I need to introduce you to Leland. He is a frog bubble wand that I got in the Target like $5 section, and I just need you to know that he is the real diamond of the season. I'm waiting for Julia Quinn to write his book. I do want to say before we get into all of the Bridgerton shenanigans that this video is being sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare is really great because you can pick up a new hobby, but you also can learn skills for your job, like if you really want to level up in life. For me, summer is the perfect time to learn something new because I live in Atlanta and it's so hot outside, and so I feel like I just want to spend time indoors learning something. I've actually been really wanting to get into bookbinding. I have a video planned where I'm going to take the Mindbook series and rebind it so that the cover is less ugly. So I was so excited when I saw that Skillshare actually had a class on how to do bookbinding. This is all the basics and how to get into it and what supplies to buy and whatnot. I've been doing so much research for this video, and I feel like Skillshare is such a great resource to learn something new. Whatever you're interested in learning, I just know that there is going to be a class on there for you. There's so much. You can learn calligraphy, you can learn crocheting, you can learn sewing, you can learn something like on how to be a leader at work. Like there's so many things that you can learn. If you're interested in starting your learning journey, the first 500 people who use the link in my description will get their first month free, which I think is a great deal. I just love Skillshare. I think it's just such a great place to learn new things, and I thank them so much for sponsoring this video. What's interesting about this book is this is actually the book when Julia Quinn first revealed who Lady Whistledown was. So if you're not a fan of the show and you've never read any of the books and you literally have no concept of this, it is a Regency romance series that focuses on the Bridgerton family. They are very affluent, very popular in the town. Every single book and season of the show focuses on a different Bridgerton finding love. Our main characters at play here is, as I said, Penelope and Colin, and then we have Lady Bridgerton, which is Colin's mom, and then these are all of his siblings, because apparently Lady Bridgerton and Lord Bridgerton would not stop making babies, which was an interesting choice. So they have 7 children. We have Anthony, Benedict, Eloise, Francesca, Hyacinth, and Gregory. Before you get your knickers in a twist, I just want to say that I did realize later in the video that I forgot Daphne. And then Penelope has a smaller family. She has her mother, Mrs. Featherington, and then Philippa, Prudence, and Felicity, who actually is not in the show. This is her younger sister, and they took her out for the show. So she actually doesn't even have an actor. I just literally Googled who do they fan cast as her, and I found this random girl. I don't even know her name. And then other important characters is we have Cressida, who's kind of like a mean girl in the town, and then we have Lady Danbury, and then we have Lady Whistledown, who is essentially a Regency gossip girl. She writes society papers where she kind of talks about what everyone is doing, what's going on. She like shares secrets and whatnot. And so we know from watching the television show that Penelope actually is Lady Whistledown, but this is the book when we find out. Like Julia Quinn apparently had never revealed it before this book. So I would imagine if you read this in real time, like when the books were coming out back in the day, this would have gagged you. The book opens in the prologue with Penelope and her mother, and I think her sisters as well, walking through the park, and Colin and one of his brothers come running by on these horses, and her bonnet flies off and it hits Colin and he falls off his horse. And that's their first meeting. She's 16 years old. He is, I believe, like 4 years older than her, so he's like 20, and she's like, this is love at first sight. Like this random man who I knocked off his horse with my bonnet, love him because he laughs when it happens and he's just really nice to her. That's something that we emphasize a lot in this, is that Penelope has always loved Colin because he's nice. And something I need to tell you about myself is that I cannot abide a story where the woman falls first. Like she fell first, literally deserves jail. I feel like that is a trope that should never be done, and Julia Quinn should do hard time in prison for making this book all about Penelope loving him for like over a decade and him barely knowing she's alive. I hate that. I hate that in the show, and I hate that in the book, and it's not my favorite thing that happens in the story. We're also told in the prologue that Penelope makes her debut into society when she's 17 years old, so just 1 year after she meets Colin, and she begs her mother to not have her go out that early because she is described as being an ugly girl with no personality. Julia Quinn is, I'm afraid, a little fat phobic. I don't really know why you would want to describe the heroine of your story that way, but that is a big part of the story, is that she's this ugly duckling who just always wished that Colin would notice her, and he has not noticed her. Until the start of this book, we are now propelled, I believe, 12 years into the future, because she's now 28 and he's 33. and she obviously never found someone to love. Like, no one ever liked her. She apparently never had any suitors at all, which I find hard to believe. And her only friend is Eloise, Colin's younger sister. They become best friends, and now they are both in their late 20s. They've kind of vowed that they never want to get married. It is said that Eloise had a lot of suitors, but she just turned them all down. And Penelope, unfortunately, like I said, was a loser that no one wanted. And they are just BFFs who love each other, and we love that. I kind of wish they were gay for one another, but that is not what this book is about. Like I mentioned at the start of this book, when we fast forward, Penelope has now lost weight. Apparently, she's lost the 2 stone, and she's now described as pleasantly rounded instead of a hideous pudge, which again, I just feel like Julie Quinn was out of pocket for saying things like that, but that is what we're dealing with in this book. Like I mentioned, we're now over a decade later, and she's just been pining after Colin. Season after season, she's been like, please notice me, senpai, and he just doesn't do it. And he has been traveling a lot. He loves to travel around the world. They do have this one incident when they're younger where she overhears Colin talking to his brothers, and he very loudly exclaims, I will never ever in this life marry Penelope Featherington, because his mother kept pressuring him to get married, and he just wanted to travel. And she specifically really likes Penelope because Penelope and Eloise are best friends, and so she kept being like, oh my god, what if you loved Penelope? And then he's like, ew, I would never. So he says that, and she overhears him, and she does recover very well, but she's obviously very hurt because he is the love of her life. And so she hears it, and she's like, okay, of course, that's fine. And then he feels bad that he hurt her feelings, but she's like, I didn't even want to marry you anyway. In present day, Colin just came back from Greece, and everybody's talking about it. It's the talk of the town. Lady Whistledown is writing about it. Everyone's like, oh my god, he just came back from Greece. He's looking sun-kissed. He's looking good. And also, he's probably going to be on the marriage market now because he is 33 years old, and Lady Bridgerton is going to be itching for him to get married. So everyone's talking about it. Their first interaction, now that he is back in town, is at a ball that is being thrown. I don't know who was throwing the ball, but they see each other. She's basically eating an eclair at the snack table because she loves snacks. She's like, I'm a spinster. I'm gonna enjoy some snacks. And he walks up to her, and she's like moaning while she's eating it, and he's like, oh, is it really that good? And she's like, and then like the cream gets everywhere, and it's like this funny moment between them. And this is when they first kind of are like taking notice of each other, because he's been away for a while, and like I mentioned, Julie Quinn did emphasize that she's lost weight, so he's kind of like, when is Penelope looking sexy? I'm feeling like she's looking more attractive than I remember. While they're talking, it says he wasn't surprised that she'd never attracted any serious suitors for her hand. She wasn't a beauty by any stretch, although upon a closer examination she was more attractive than he'd remembered her to be. I don't want a man that would think of me that way. If you don't find me attractive from the day we meet, then I don't want it. But unfortunately, Penelope does want it, so the story does continue, even though he thinks of her that way. He's like, yeah, it makes sense that no one would ever want to marry her, but I guess she's looking hotter than I remember her. So while they're talking at this ball, Lady Danbury actually comes up to them, and they start discussing Lady Whistledown, because everyone this season has been talking about how everything is just so boring. Like, everything's so boring. The only interesting thing is Lady Whistledown. So Lady Danbury is like, hey, let's spice things up. Let's get people thinking, whatever. She makes an announcement to everyone at the ball that she's like, I will give whoever can unmask Lady Whistledown 1,000 pounds. So everybody starts losing their minds, because obviously 1,000 pounds back in the Regency times was a lot of money. So everybody's like, oh my god, we have to find out who Lady Whistledown is. The next time that our two characters interact is when Penelope is walking down the street, and she's doing a little dance. She's just feeling it. She's feeling the moment, and he catches her dancing. And so they kind of have this exchange where he's like, oh, were you dancing in the street? And she's like, no, I wasn't dancing. And he's like, well, I think it's kind of fun if you were. She's like, okay, I lied, I was dancing. And then he offers to dance with her, but this makes her feel some type of way, because she's like, okay, Colin, if people saw us dancing, they would think that we were courting. And he was like, what's wrong with that? Ha ha ha. Like, everybody loves me, because everybody loves him. Like, everybody wants a piece of Colin. And she, like I said, is very unpopular, and people don't really love her. He kind of realizes as she's saying, like, that would not be very nice to me if everyone thought we were courting, and then it came out that we weren't. Everybody would think that you dumped me because I'm a loser. And he's like, oh. He just doesn't understand what it's like to be Penelope. Like, he has no concept of people not liking him or not being popular or wealthy or whatever. And so she has to often like tell him how she feels so he can like understand her point of view. And I don't know, I know that that can be okay, but I just didn't love that aspect, because it was just giving privileged white man, and I don't love that. Fast forward, Penelope comes over to the Bridgerton household because she's there to meet Eloise, but apparently Eloise has forgotten about the fact that they're meeting. So the butler puts her up in the informal drawing room, because she's basically like family to them. And while she's waiting in there, she sees this journal that's open. And she's like, what is that? So she reads the first few lines, and turns out it's Colin's. And so it's talking about his travels to Greece. And so she's like, let me read this. So she starts reading, and she's taken with his writing. He's describing the water in Greece and how it felt like bath water. I honestly didn't think it was that impressive, but Penelope was eating it up. And so she promises herself that she'll only read the first like 2 pages that she can see open, but then she's like, oh, I have to. So she starts to turn the page and Colin walks in and he finds her. And so he flips out because obviously she was reading his journal, which is one of the most understandable things he did in this book. I did not agree with him most of the time, but this was the one time where I was like, okay, someone reading your journal is not okay. While they're having this argument about her having read his journal, Colin actually cuts his hand on a letter opener. And so she kind of has to play his nurse and she's like helping him fix his hand. And so while they're talking, she tells him, she's like, Colin, your writing was amazing. It was so good. And so he stops being mad because he's like, wait, tell me more. You think my writing was good? He's like fishing for compliments. And she's like, yes, it was amazing. I felt like I was in Greece. I've never traveled anywhere and your writing just transported me, blah, blah, blah. So then Colin uses this as an opportunity to complain to Penelope about how hard it is to be him. He's like, you don't understand. I'm just so likable and everyone's so obsessed with me and I'm so popular, but like no one really gets me. Nobody really understands me and I'm just not good at anything. Like nobody would even understand. Like I have nothing to call my own. I very much was not about the scene because one of my pet peeves when I'm reading a romance book is when the female character has to be a therapist to the whiny guy because he's just like, oh, it's so hard being me. And she's like, no, Colin, you're perfect. Everyone loves you. And she's just having to like make him feel better. This exchange that they have starts making Colin a little bit nervous because he starts to notice how much he likes having Penelope around. Then a flash forward, Colin actually comes to Penelope's house because he's very concerned. Everyone in the town is trying to figure out who Lady Whistledown is, and like people are like going at great lengths to try to figure it out. And he starts suspecting that his sister Eloise is Lady Whistledown because he saw that she had been writing letters and she had like ink on her fingers, and she's described as being extremely nosy. Like everyone talks about how much she likes drama, she likes tea, she wants to know what's going on. So he's like, Penelope, please, I think that my sister might be Lady Whistledown. And he goes into great detail about, he's like, that would be horrible for her, she would be ruined in society, people would be so mad if she was Lady Whistledown, blah, blah, blah. And Penelope keeps reassuring him. She's like, no, I know that she's not her. Like I would know, we're best friends, there's no way. Also, we know, I mean, if you've seen the show, that, you know, she's Lady Whistledown. So she's like, no, I know for certain that it's not Eloise. And he's just not having it. He's like so upset. He's like, no, like please, like you have to understand, like I really think it's Eloise. And then he starts talking about the power of rumors. He's like, okay, well, even if she isn't Lady Whistledown, rumors are super powerful. Like if somebody thought she was Lady Whistledown, then we would be in trouble. And then just randomly throws out for some reason, he's like, imagine if someone started a rumor that I seduced you, you'd be ruined. It doesn't matter if I did or I didn't. People would just believe it because everyone started saying it. And so then the energy between them starts getting very charged because he's basically talking about sleeping with her. And she's like, and he's like, and then she just very suddenly is like, Colin, would you please kiss me? She just has this moment where she's like, I'm 28, I'm a burden to my parents. I'm just kidding. She does not go into the speech from Pride and Prejudice, but she basically is like, I'm 28, I'm a spinster, and I'm probably never going to be kissed, and I want to be kissed by the guy that I like. So they lock lips, they have a little kissing moment, and he starts getting really into it. Like he's like, he's going to town. And she's just kind of like sitting there like very like, I don't know what to do. And then she says thank you after it, and it like ruins the moment because he was like, I kind of like what's going on here. And then she's just like, thank you, because she thinks it's a pity kiss. And then he gets really upset. Honestly, the reason that her saying thank you makes him so mad is because he's feeling very guilty because he feels like he kind of took advantage of her by kissing. And so then she is left reassuring him that no, you're not a bad person. I asked you to kiss me, blah, blah. You're always brought back to Penelope trying to make Colin feel better because Colin is a loser. This leads into the next ball where everyone is buzzing with the fact that Lady Whistledown wrote her final society paper. She announces to everyone that she is retiring, that she's no longer be doing this. As we probably can suspect, I think this is Penelope trying to get the heat off her. She's like, I don't really want to be exposed as Lady Whistledown. So Lady Whistledown is basically like, everybody keeps trying to figure out who I am, so because of that, I'm not gonna write anymore. And then Cressida, the local mean girl, takes this as the opportunity to take credit. She's like, hey everyone, I want my £1,000 from Lady Danbury. I am Lady Whistledown. Lady Danbury, she's not having this. She's not having it. She's like, she doesn't like Cressida, and she's like, girl, I know you're doing this for the money. Like, what the fuck? You gotta show me proof. So they have like this big fight in front of everyone because Cressida's like, I would like my money, please. And she's like, no, you need to prove that you're Lady Whistledown because I'm not going to just give you money. Something you need to know about Cressida's backstory is that she actually was previously married and her ex-husband had lied to her about how much money he had, and then he died. And so she was left not having much. And the only reason that she kind of still has a place in society and people like her is because she's so beautiful and popular. Like everyone likes her. So nobody will kind of challenge the fact that she's kind of a poor now. Colin and Penelope have still not spoken since the kissing incident. So he's like, hey, I should really go to her house and apologize. So when he's on his way to her house, he actually sees her on the corner of the street getting into an unmarked carriage, like she's rented it. And he's like, why is she doing that? Where is she going? So he gets in his carriage and he tells his driver, like, follow her. And so he keeps traveling with her. And the whole time he's like wondering, he's like, what is she up to? Like, why is she doing all this stuff? And so he sees they're getting deeper and deeper into the city. And then once they get into the city, he starts freaking out because he's like, this is no place for a woman to be alone, because she didn't have a maid or anyone with her. By the time he catches up with her, she's gone into this church and he has now become irate, which was very annoying. Like, I kind of get that he was concerned about her safety, but the way that he gets mad about it is so annoying. It's very like possessive, very like, how dare she go into the city when she's a woman? I can't believe she did that. And I don't know, I didn't really love that, but he is concerned for her safety. So he follows her into the church and he surprises her. Also, another thing about this exchange that was really annoying was that as he was like sneaking up to like surprise her and like thinking about the fact that she had traveled alone, it says, but most of all, he was furious that she had a secret. Irrational as it was, he absolutely could not tolerate the fact that she had a secret. She was Penelope. She was supposed to be an open book. He knew her. He'd always known her. And now it seemed like he'd never known her. Breaking news. Local man is very upset when he finds out that a woman has a life outside of him. Colin yanks the envelope out of Penelope's hands that she's holding and he opens it, and we find that inside, as Lady Whistledown, she's written one more note saying that Cressida is actually not Lady Whistledown because she did not want Cressida to take the credit. And so he gets really angry. Like, he's already angry that she like endangered herself, that she has a secret, blah, blah, blah. But now he's like, and you're Lady Whistledown? Like, what the fuck? And so he forces her to get into his carriage with them, and they start having a fight in the carriage about the fact that she's Lady Whistledown. What really grinds my gears about this scene is that when they're arguing in the carriage, he's being like really mean to her. He's like, you're acting like a child. Like, I can't believe you. Blah, blah, blah. You're a child. Blah, blah, blah. And she just like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I have a legacy. Like, I'm Lady Whistledown. Like, I've accomplished so much. Like, why are you being rude to me? So she kind of shoots back at him. She's like, well, you always travel because you're running away from your problems, and you should probably like get back here and settle down because you're fucking 33 and you should get married. Your mom wants you to get married. Everybody wants you to get married, and you're being a loser that travels around the world. So he's very rude to her, and he goes, oh, is that a proposal? And she's like, you know it's not. Don't try to change the subject by being deliberately cruel. And then he's kind of like, well, you're 28. You should get married. And then she's like, okay, I would have gotten married if people had offered to marry me, but nobody wanted me to marry me. And you're being very rude about the fact that I'm an ugly duckling that nobody fucking wants to marry. He keeps going on and on about how if anyone found out that you were Lady Whistledown, then your life would be ruined. You'd be ruined in society. And she's like, well, I'm not popular right now. And then she's like, well, Cressida wasn't ruined by everyone finding out that she was Lady Whistledown. And he goes, well, that's different because she's like popular. Didn't realize you were such an asshole. I thought that you would have looked past the fact that I am an ugly duckling. I thought you thought more of me. Like, didn't think you also thought I was an ugly loser. And then he gets very upset that she thinks that he thinks that she's ugly. And he's like, I don't think you're ugly. I think you're beautiful. And she's like, no, you don't. Don't say that. Like, stop being rude. Like, do not just play with my feelings like that. So he's like, no, seriously, I think you're beautiful. And he's like, I don't know why anyone else doesn't see it when I see it. And I understand that this was supposed to be romantic. Like, if you feel like no one sees you in this world and that you're ugly, and then like one man reaches out to you and he's like, no, you're actually beautiful. Like, that's supposed to make you feel special. But for me, ew, ew, ew. You can compliment me without putting me down like that. I especially didn't like this because it says that she thinks to herself, it made her lightheaded, it made her content, it made her whole. And I'm like, not her being whole from the first time a man calls her beautiful. Like, girl, get up. Get up, stand up, please, Penelope. I know you're better than this. So they start kissing. They're making out in this carriage. He's starting to like pull her dress off. They're like getting hot and heavy. He's like, girl, I find you so beautiful. And they're like macking on each other. I will say that this scene actually was very well written and I could feel the chemistry between them. So even though I literally hate this man, I was kind of like, okay, this is kind of cute. They're like having a little moment. And then they arrive at her house and it's time to go inside. And she's all like disheveled. And she's like, oh my God, well, what do we do? And so he's like, all right, come inside with me. Like, we're going inside. And she's like, what do you mean? Where are we going? And then he goes, are you going to marry me or not? So they go inside and they kind of barge into the drawing room where Mrs. Featherington and the whole Featherington clan are kind of together doing their weekly family meeting. And so he announces to everyone that he wants to propose to Mrs. Featherington's daughter. Mrs. Featherington is not very nice. She doesn't think very highly of her daughter because she's like a spinster and she basically, in so many words, like basically tells Penelope all the time that she's ugly. She thinks that he's there to propose to Felicity, the youngest daughter, even though she's like literally the same age as his younger sister Hyacinth. He's like, oh yeah, I want to propose to your daughter, blah, blah, blah. And then she keeps being like, Felicity, Felicity. And then finally he's like, why would I be proposing to Felicity? I am here with Penelope. Obviously I want to propose to Penelope. And Mrs. Featherington's like, oh, Penelope, are you sure? You want Penelope? And he's like, yes. And this is the one scene where I actually really did like Colin because he was like defending her because her mom was honestly not very nice. So then fast forward, Penelope and Eloise are now talking about the engagement. Eloise is kind of confiding in her that she's a little sad that she's going to be getting married. Like, she's happy that she's basically going to be her sister now, but she's sad because she thought they were going to be spinsters together forever. And she's like, oh, it's kind of sad that you're like going on for a partner and I don't have that. Colin comes in while they're talking and he seems super horny for Penelope. Like, you can just tell that he wants her real bad. And so Eloise is like, okay, I'm gonna leave you guys alone because the energy here in the studio is weird. I don't like it. She leaves and then they're left alone and they start getting hot and heavy. Colin's like, oh, we gotta stop. We can't get frisky. Like, our wedding is a full month away. And Penelope's like, oh, Okay. So basically Colin just keeps contemplating, like, do I love Penelope? Because every time he looks at her, he's like, I'm getting these weird, like, fuzzy feelings inside. And I don't know, I might love her. But he's also like, doesn't want to commit to that because he's like afraid of love. I don't really know what his deal is, but he's just like afraid to admit how much he likes Penelope, even though they're now engaged. So at their engagement party, everybody's going crazy. Like, everybody cannot believe that they got engaged. They're like, oh my God, this is the gossip of the season. Like, we can't believe this. Lady Whistledown comes back out of retirement one time to write to everyone to say, hey, I've heard that Cressida claims she's me. I just want to say, no, she's not. I am me, and she is not me. And so then Colin gets really, really angry because obviously he knows that Lady Whistledown is Penelope. And he was like, I forbade you from publishing as her again. And she's like, what do you mean? You did not forbid me from doing anything. Like, this is my life. I can do what I want. And he's like, you're going to be my wife? How dare you go and do something that you know that I did not like? And he's being like super mean to her about it. There's literally a part where when he hears this in front of everyone at the engagement party, he doesn't want to get mad in front of everyone because he cares that like everyone like is obsessed with him and thinks he's so great. And so he's like, I don't want everybody to see me lose my temper. So he like grabs Penelope's upper arm and is like gripping it. Like, literally Julia Quinn writes that she's gonna like have a bruise on her arm from how tight he's gripping her, which I don't love. It's giving abuse vibes. Didn't love that. I just need bro to lighten up. Like, it's not that serious. Like, yes, you're worried about her, you know, coming out in society and everyone, you know, shaming her because she was Lady Whistledown, because she, you know, she's written about all the gossip over all these years. But I feel like he just like really infantilizes her and is very rude to her about it. So then they break away from the party and he brings her upstairs to his bedroom. And he is scolding her about the Lady Whistledown thing. They're going back and forth. And then we find out in his POV that the reason that he's so angry is not just because she'll be ruined by society, but because he's jealous of her. He also wants to be a writer, and she has been like a very accomplished writer, that everyone loves her writing, all this stuff. And he's like, oh my God, I'm a nobody because I don't have anything to call my own. And so he's just very much giving loser vibes again. So as they're arguing, Colin finally realizes like, oh my God, I love Penelope. And so they start getting their freak on. And one thing I need to say is that this book is so fucking long to only have one real sex scene. I am angry about it because I didn't even find the sex scene to be that good. He basically just touches her boobs a lot and keeps talking about the weight of them. And then there's this one part where he's like, oh, I just want to get behind you and like hold your boobs and like look at you in the mirror, which I have been hearing there's some sort of mirror scene in the show, but in the book it's really short where he's just like, I want to look at them. And he's like, just kidding, we don't have time for that. And then he just like starts finger blasting her a little bit, and then they have sex. But the foreplay just really wasn't working for me. I don't know, it's just not the kind of sex that I personally would be wanting to have. Not that you guys were asking, but I'm just letting you know that that's how I felt, is I just thought the foreplay was lacking. And then they have sex and she gets off from penetration, obviously, because every girl who's had sex for the first time just gets off from penetration. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Also, if you're watching this and you're one of those girls that can get off from penetration and you're about to write in my comments, well, actually, I just need you to know that a majority of women do not get off from that. Like, we need other foreplay to get off. So I need you to save your breath and do not type that in the comments. So because they have sex early, they do end up getting their wedding pushed up. So I think they end up getting married like a week or two later. So apparently newlywed life between them is so magical. Penelope's having a great time. The only thing they still have tension about is the topic of Lady Whistledown. Like, they just never talk about it because every time it comes up, he gets in a really bad mood. He's very rude to her about it. So she's like, fine, let's just like not talk about it. And she starts getting kind of ashamed and upset because she thinks that the reason he doesn't like Lady Whistledown is that he's embarrassed by her, or he thinks that her writing was bad, or that it was a bad thing that she did. So she's feeling some type of way about this, and she's just like, I wish my husband would support me on this topic. When they finally do have a conversation about it, Colin finally admits to her that the reason that it makes him so upset is that he's jealous of her. And he's like, you just have made a life for yourself, and you have something to call your own, and I just feel like a little loser. And then again, she's having to reassure him. She's like, no, Colin, your writing is so good. You should publish your writing. You should be a travel writer, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, really? Really? You think my writing is that good? And she's like, yes. And then she agrees to help him. She's like, you know, I have a lot of writing history because, you know, I was Lady Whistledown. I could like edit your stuff. And he's like, really? You would do that? And she's like, yeah. And so she becomes his editor. And so he is now writing a book. Okay, then fast forward. Miss Cressida comes to their house and she's like, hey, Penelope, I know that you are Lady Whistledown. Because she's really mad that Lady Whistledown wrote and said that she was not her. She's like, you caused me to not be able to get the 1,000 pounds, so I'm gonna need you to give me 10,000 pounds because you obviously made a lot of money selling the Lady Whistledown papers, so you need to give me all my money. And she's like, I literally don't have 10,000 pounds, like I only have 8,000. And she's like, well, your husband's really rich, so just give me the money. And she basically threatens, if you do not pay me off, then I will tell everyone that you were Lady Whistledown and everybody will hate you and it will be bad for you. And so Penelope's like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Like, literally Colin said this was gonna happen. So she approaches Colin and she's like, Colin, I made a mistake. Like, you were so right. right? Like Cressida, whatever. And he's like, I've got a plan. So he brings her up in front of everyone and he's like, I just want everyone to know how much I love my new wife. My new wife is amazing. She's hot. She's sexy. I love her. Like, and he kind of starts hinting to everyone in the crowd, like, I really love her, like in the bedroom. He doesn't say that obviously explicitly, but he, you know, he's hinting about how much he loves being around her. And everybody's like laughing. And he's like, also on top of that, I need you all to know that she is Lady Whistledown. And he just kind of mic drop, tells everyone. And then he's like, and we're leaving the party early. And so then they leave the party and she's like, oh my God, I cannot believe that you told everyone that I was Lady Whistledown. And because he made such a big statement about it, and Lady Danbury in support of her was like clapping, and then everybody else started clapping, it ends up being fine. And nobody thinks it's a big deal that she's Lady Whistledown and everything is good. So then we're brought to the epilogue, and obviously Penelope is pregnant because you cannot read a romance book without having a baby log where the woman is having babies, because obviously, I mean, I guess it is Regency time, so it's even more common to have children, but I just hate epilogues where there's babies. It's not for me. We also find out that Colin is now a published travel writer. He's written about his trips to Scotland and Greece and all the places that he's been, and Penelope is very proud of him. And then we also find out that she is kind of itching to get back into writing as well. And so she tells him, she's like, I think that I'm going to write a fiction book called The Wallflower, because she was a wallflower for so many years. And I'm like, Mrs. Tessa Dare, you better watch out. Although now that I think of it, I feel like every Regency romance author has some sort of series or book that has the title Wallflower in it. But that brings us to the end of the book. So that's what happens in the book. I have not watched the season yet. I feel like this is my 10th time saying that, but I have not watched it yet, so I cannot compare which one I like better. I have a feeling that I like the show more just because book Colin literally deserves jail. Like, I need this man to just don't. All in all, I think my rating for this book is going to be 3 stars because, like I mentioned, I really enjoyed Julia Quinn's writing style. I do think that this book was ungodly long for what it was. I did not enjoy the length at all. There was a lot of scenes that I was just kind of like, can we wrap this up? Like, I don't even think I went over every single little thing that happened because I was just like, there's no point to this. And then obviously, like I said, book Colin is horrible, and that definitely took off a couple stars, but I did enjoy book Penelope. I did enjoy her, and I know that I'm going to enjoy her in the show. So overall, not as bad as I thought it was going to be, because everyone always says that the Bridgerton books are bad, and I just thought it was okay. Again, I don't know if I'll read more of them unless you guys want me to. I did want to ask if you guys wanted me to review the other books and do more kind of deep dive bulletin board sort of things, because I'm happy to read more, and I also probably would read more like when the next season comes out. But if you want me to go back and do like Daphne's book and maybe even, you know, Kate and Anthony's book, that I would be happy to do that. You'll just have to let me know if you want that from me. Also, before we go, I do need to blow bubbles with Leland because it's kind of tradition whenever I have him in a video. Okay, there we go. If you've made it to the end of this video, feel free to use the bubble emoji in honor of Leland and the bubbles that we've created. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.